Hey guys, Tech Valley here, and welcome to the 5th lesson of learning Vue. Last time we went over common use directives like vOn, vModel, and today we'll be learning about methods. So what are methods? Methods are functions associated with the Vue instance. They are defined inside of a method property inside the Vue instance. They can be used in a myriad of ways, but for our examples, we'll look at how it's being utilized via event handlers and functionality. Like our previous lessons, we're going to keep the same index.html and app.js format, but I want to add 2 link tags for the sake of this exercise. All the prior lessons, we haven't really worried about CSS, and I don't really plan on talking too much about it, but any custom CSS that can be added will be copied and can be copied and pasted via GitHub link below. But I also want to add Bootstrap to give it a little bit of styling, so I'm going to be copying 2 link tags. Cool. So the first link tag is in reference to the Bootstrap, and the second link tag will be in reference to the style.css. Currently, right now, it's a bit empty, but I'm just going to be copying and pasting over some of the pre-code that I've already written prior to this lesson. Just like before, in the index.html, there's going to be a div with the ID @Vue, and then in our app.js, we're going to be creating a new Vue instance. Let's do that. New Vue. Let's reference to the element called app Vue, and then we'll create a data function here, and then let's return a set of data. So before we move on to this exercise, I really want to emphasize what we're going to be doing to show you the power of methods. And we're really going to be piggybacking off of some of the directives that we've already been using, like the vOn and then the vModel. So for now, what we want to do is render a list of fruits to a user, and then we're going to be adding an input field where the user can add to the list by typing in various different fruits. But for now, I think we could initialize the data and kind of just show you what we're going to be starting off with, and then kind of start adding the methods progressively. So let's do that. The first variable that I really want to return is the list of fruits. So I could do fruits, then I could just do apple, oranges, apricots. Cool. And then the second variable I want to use is something like current fruit. And this will be initialized as an empty string. The empty string is initialized for the input field. Okay, so I think with this amount of information, we can actually render some data to the user. So let's go back to our index.html. And then first, let's add a input field. And we could keep it as a type of text. And then just like before, we'll use the vModel directive to hook the current fruit to that input field. And then secondly, we can create an unordered list and use the v-for directive like before to loop over the list of fruits and just show you the fruit one by one. So v-for equals fruit in fruits, and then let's render the fruit. Cool, let's see what happens. Awesome. And then we see the input field here, and let me just zoom in a little bit. So we could see the input field here, and then we could see the list of fruits. Now, how do we utilize methods to possibly add to the list of fruits? Let's go back to our code. So looking at our input tag, there isn't much functionality associated to it. The only thing that's happening right now is that when the user makes any changes to the input field, it just updates the current fruit. But what we really want to do is we want to allow the user to type in some input, and then when they press enter, it adds to the list. How would we be able to hook that kind of action to this input tag? And if you guess vOn directive, then that's exactly right. So let's kind of clean this up a little bit. Do that. And then we'll add a vOn. And instead of like a click that we've used before, we could actually utilize another command called key up and then .enter. And what that says is that when a user presses enter, perform some kind of action. And in our case, we'll call it add fruit. Notice that right now, add fruit isn't defined anywhere. So if we go back to our code here, it's not really going to be doing anything. If anything, they're going to say add fruit is not a function. Let's go back to our app.js. And this is where we start utilizing our methods. So I'm going to create a methods key here. And basically the methods object will have a key value pair of all these functions that are associated to the Vue instance. So in our case, we'll call it something like add fruit, and then we'll reference it to a function here. And inside of the methods function, we could actually reference back to our data variables like fruits and current fruits like this.fruits and this.current fruit. So right now, inside of this function, we know that the current fruit is being updated dynamically via the model. So in this case, if we were to type something like new apples, and we go back to here, that this.current fruit would be new apples. And in this case, we really want to add to the list that we currently have. So to do that, we can utilize JavaScript's push method. So it'll be this.fruits.push this.current fruit. So what this will do now is that when the user presses enter, it calls add fruit method, and then inside of the add fruit method, we're going to be pushing this current fruit to the list of fruits that we already have. And after we do that, we want to reinitialize it back to an empty string, so it gives a better user feedback that, hey, you can enter like new information if you like. So let's do something like this. This.current fruit equals empty string. Let's run the code and see what happens. New apple. Bananas. See? Awesome. Now we can see that basically when a user presses enter after they finish writing their string, you could add to their list. What if we want to remove something from a list? Let's look at the code below. So right now there isn't any type of action to remove items from a list, but let's go back to our index.html. And in here, we could possibly add like a button tag of some sort. So let's look at it here. We'll add a button, and for class, we could give it a button danger. And this is utilizing the Bootstrap CSS that's given to you via the link right here. And then here, we could call it something like remove. If we look at the index.html, it's a little bit zoomed in, but I'll leave it this way. But right now, the button isn't actually doing anything. But if we go back to our code here, we could give this button a v-on directive and kind of do some kind of action as needed. So let's do something like v-on, click, equals remove fruit. And just like before, let's go back into our app.js and define what remove fruit is going to do. And as I was writing this, I realized I made a slight miserror, and I really need to know what the index of each of these items are to remove that specific fruit. So if I go back to the index.html, I can make a slight modification to how the fruits work by adding a little bit of code here. So if I do wrap this in a parentheses and provide an index here, I can actually pass in arguments to the remove fruit like this. So right now, and every single function will have every single function of the remove fruit will have an index as an argument. So if we go back to our app.js and add an index here, then it will know exactly where each fruit is located. And what we want to do right now is basically say this.fruits.splice index and just one element. So what this does is saying, hey, look at the index of where you want to remove your fruit and just remove that specific element. And let's go back to our browser. So now I could add new fruits, but I could also remove it now. Cool. And I'll just refresh the page just to show you how it looks right off the bat. The last thing I want to do is add some CSS, but like I said before, it's not going to be something that I'm going to be really discussing too much, and it's going to be more of a copy and paste. For the sake of CSS, I actually need to add another div here, and then with a class of fruits, and then I'm just going to be copying and paste the code that we previously written here, and just paste it here. And then go back to our style.css here, and then we'll actually copy and paste this here. And then if we go refer back here, all right, nice and pretty. So New apples, remove. Awesome, cool. In summary, we have seen the power of methods and how it can be hooked up in the index.html. By learning about directives, we were naturally able to use methods gracefully and make proper updates. Inside the method functions, you can reference the Vue instance data via this.variablename. I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and the next one will go over computed. Bye.